Joining everyone. Really appreciate the support. It's a very busy time over here at GP365. We're going to talk more about why in a few minutes, but there is a lot going on. Our official and public launch of the product is actually in only a few days, August 1st. Our new website's live, which we're going to talk about more soon. So really excited about everything that's going on and appreciate you guys giving us a piece of your Thursday. Today, we're going to be tackling electronic reconciliation. So we're going to be giving you a background on sort of what it is. We're also going to be covering a use case, which will give, I think, a good definition to its power. But first, as always, we'll talk briefly about who we are, what we do, and we're also going to have a bit of a new format for today. We're going to have sort of a segment for questions. So if you have questions, not just about electronic reconciliation, but maybe something else, maybe you have a GP problem, maybe you have another issue, we're going to leave the last, sort of maybe 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, depending on the questions we get for anything that you'd like to ask. And if Carlos knows the answer, Carlos, that's a big if. You feeling knowledgeable today?
I'm feeling knowledgeable, but now having said that, now that you've put me in this huge pedestal and everyone's looking at me like an incredible person, I do want everyone to know that sometimes troubleshooting is a bit of back and forth. Someone's asked a question, I say, oh wait, what do you mean by that? Or or does this always happen? So I think it's not necessarily my knowledge, but just how much information I need that will determine how full the answer will be.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we might not be able to dig too deep. And the questions don't even have to be GP related, right? They can be about life. They can be about, the equation to pi. I mean, there's just anything, right?
Yeah, like 3.141592897.
Okay, stop. We're gonna keep going. All right, so let's get started. As always, we can't hear you. If you're having trouble hearing us or you have a question, use the questions box. We're gonna come to those at the end. If you have a topic idea or something you'd like us to cover, feel free to put that in there as well, and we'll make sure that we come back to it. All right, so who are we? What are we about? So the first thing is we are based out of Toronto, Canada. We have been doing GP for close to 20 years. And we are, completely obsessed with it. We have posters of GP on our wall. Everyone here is very passionate about this product. Over those 20 years, we've listened to a lot of customers, looking for a better way to use GP, looking for more out of the product. And that's kind of how GP365 started. We wanted to create a simpler experience. We wanted a better way of accessing GP, and we wanted to just make life easy for all those who are using it, and for all those who have to, ultimately budget for the costs that go along with it. So we're going to talk more about the product that we sell in just a second, but we have been completely in love with GP for a very long time, and ultimately it's allowed us to come up with our offering. So GP365 is essentially the same GP that you know, but hosted inside of Microsoft's cloud. We've built a whole bunch of really cool things that make the GP experience even better, from things like if you are in the middle of creating a purchase order and you want to go home for the day, you can close your laptop and it'll pick back up where you left off. You can access GP from anywhere at any time. It's very fast, unlike a lot of local installs or VPN installs. It's just a really, really strong product. It's also supported across all the add-ons that you can think of, including the big ones, integration-wise, like anything you're connecting with Smart Connect or any of the other E1 products, Macorma, it supports all of those. And we also are partner-friendly. So the cool part about that is if you're working with a partner right now and you like them, yay, keep working with them. We want to encourage that relationship. They know all about you. And if things are good, why change a good thing? GP365, as I mentioned, is in a state of being publicly launched in only a few days. And what that means is you're able to essentially buy GP365 officially starting August 1st. Our new website is online. We're going to talk more about that, but we're going to be having all sorts of really cool things coming up. If you want to see the product, it's now going to, you can book a demo with us and we can show you what it looks like, what it feels like. You can envision what life would be like with it. and also costing. So we can go through how much it would be to your organization if you decided to move over. Just a few last features before we move on. Something that's really cool is the ability to scale users. So if you want to start out with 3 users, you need an additional user for a month, you can add that user. If the next month you don't need them, you can get rid of it. We really want to allow for the freedom of not needing to buy that big expensive GP license. For the US folk on the phone, it is around 3,000 US for a license. For the Canadians, it's around $3,700. All of those costs are included inside of our GP365 license, which means you don't need to pay that annoying enhancement fee every year to Microsoft. Those fees go away. And I could talk about GP365 for days, but I don't want to do that. So if you're interested, you want to see the product, we're booking demos in August. I think right now we're mid-August for demos. We're moving quite a few organizations over. As most of you know, we had a bit of a lineup. And we're also doing an August promo to really kick things off. So anyone who signs up in August can lock in that price for 3 years. So you talk about peace of mind, and you talk about wanting to be able to budget for, ultimately everything that you can think of related to GP. What better way to do that than to be able to lock that price in for 3 years? So with that, enough of my salesy, literature. I'm going to pass it over to Carlos, who's going to tell you a bit about what electronic bank reconciliation is. And Carlos, take it away.
Great, thanks, John. So yeah, electronic bank rec. I think everyone's already familiar with bank reconciliation. So bank rec is reads information from accounts payable, from accounts receivable, a few other things, and long story short, you're just reconciling that to the bank statement. So the problem is that there can be, depending on the industry, a lot of checks that you have to reconcile, or maybe a lot of deposits from cash receiving. And by the lots, I mean hundreds or thousands, depends on the industry. And it can just take an overwhelming amount of time to reconcile that. And there's a lot of confusion, a lot of flipping through cash checks and so on. So that's what electronic bank rec is really trying to help you out with. So to put it quick, you get a file from the bank, right? So TD, for example, RBC, whoever happens to be, it might be downloaded from their website. And when you get it, then you import into Dynamics GP. And once you open up the bank rec window, then all your checks that are cleared are automatically reconciled, and also all your bank deposits are automatically reconciled, right? So it is like a really fast solution. Something that could have taken several hours before suddenly becomes just a few minutes worth of effort. Really, you're probably going to spend more time downloading that file from the bank than you're actually going to spend actually doing bank rec. So it dramatically improves things. Yeah, and I do consider bank rec to be one of those 3 modules that are very quick and easy and inexpensive to actually implement, and has a huge impact in your actual GP experience. So by that I mean there's electronic bank rec, there's SafePay, and there's EFT, electronics funds transfer. So they're all meant to either save you money by making sure people don't steal forge your checks, or save yourself from having to print checks, or in this case, save yourself potentially hours of frustration of actually doing your bank rec. Okay, so we're going to review a specific case, right? So with this organization, they have been doing a lot of bank rec. They're doing it on a weekly basis, and there's a lot of moving pieces in there. So there's the Cash App person who's doing the checks and the other sort of payments, and they're processing the payments, they're posting the batches, and then the reconciler, a separate person, is trying to go through all that and figure out how to gather up all the deposits, and then the reconciler is maybe telling the Cash App person one thing, and then the Cash App person is going back to the other person, and then there's a lot of effort just trying to go through all this effort. I mean, it's trying to get it all reconciled. So in that case, it's a big nightmare. It's really confusing, and I know that it was taking them several hours every week. I think a lot of people can relate. Sometimes they do it once a month, and that can be also very painful. In fact, probably a little more complicated in that case. So in that case, we ended up using electronic bank rec, and then also a new feature that GP has, which I will show you, called automatic bank deposits. And you can guess what that one does. It automatically makes your deposits for you instead of you having to do it yourself. But anyway, we used those two features, and it went for them. The benefit there was that they went from several hours each week, they're a high volume company, to literally no time at all spent in GP, at least for bank rec, right? So, or at least no more than, let's say, 15 minutes for actually importing the file. So it is a dramatic improvement. It's not just time, they saved a lot of time, and it's not just money, they saved themselves some money in the actual cost of all that, but it's also the actual number of errors that are reduced and the frustration. That's really what made the difference for them. It became it was no longer, bank rec was no longer a distraction. The reconciler actually went back to his real job as an accounting manager. He didn't really want to be the reconciler. He wanted to do his actual job of managing people and managing the money. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. All right,
So
John, I
Carlos,
think,
with that, should we I'll hand the control over to you. Can I trust you?
yeah.
Here we go. All right, so you just have to share your screen and I'll let you know when we can see you. Perfect. I think your webcam's on. No, I'm just kidding.
I actually
Just
have a
trolling.
little yellow piece of paper on my webcam. I saw the CEO of Facebook has that on his computer at all times, and I thought whatever is good for enough for him is good enough for me. So, all right. So let's. I mentioned that I'm going to show you two different features. The automatic deposit is actually by far the fastest thing to set up. So I will do that really fast in about 30 seconds or so, within 30 seconds of effort, and then I'll actually describe what it does. So I'm going to go to Tool, Setup, Company and Company. I think everyone can see the menu that I'm opening up, right? And this window is the window that's used for setting up the company and so on. There's one button at the very bottom called the Options button. And if you scroll way over to the bottom, then there's an option right there called Automatically Post Cash Receipt Deposits. Okay, so it's as simple as simply doing a check mark. Very, very, very easy to implement. I've now implemented it. It's done. But maybe what's worthwhile is actually describing what this actually does. So from now on, every time the Cash App people are posting their batch, then GP will look at that batch, and if you have 5 transactions in there or 100 transactions or whatever, then all those things will become one bank deposit. Okay, so that does mean that you're relying on the Cash App person to put things in the proper batch. They might have 2 batches, for example, open in one day, but that's at the end of the day what it does. Now, I could have sworn that I closed my Outlook, but it seems that I'm still receiving some things in here. But there we go. And now, okay. All right, so there we go. I have implemented that option. It is now set up. And once again, let me just show you visually what it's actually doing. So if I go to the receivables batch window, then I have one batch in there, and someone might, a different organization might have 2 or 3 or maybe 5 or 10 batches on one day. It's up to them. Just remember that that really does relate to how the deposit will be done. So in this batch, I have 6 transactions for $1,019.11. When I post that, then there you go. That's actually something that everyone is already doing, but this will also take the extra step of actually making a deposit out of that, right? So I'll just go ahead and close some of these reports, and we can actually see the end result. All right. So I went into the cash receipt batch window. I posted my cash receipt batch, and now because of that, I should be able to go to my, actually, let me go to the financial page. This is what people do nowadays. and I'm going to go to the reconcile window. So under transactions, I go to reconcile bank statement. I go to my bank account. And when I look at the transactions that are going to be reconciled, that are available to be reconciled, then I'll see all the checks that are waiting. These are, by the way, accounts payable checks. So checks that we have issued to other people. You can see they're all unreconciled. That's something that I'm going to be reconciling. And I would also see potentially other types of transactions that have to be reconciled. Okay, so that's going to be our goal for electronic bank rec. So let's do that. Now keep in mind, I have just about a dozen or so checks that have to be reconciled. I might have all sorts of deposits as well. I've kept this example pretty simple. I'm going to get a file, I'm going to import it, and then I'm going to see that all these things have already been reconciled. It's only a dozen this time, but you can imagine if there was 100 or 500 or some other sort of number in terms of number of checks or deposits, then this could take a much longer time. Okay, so let's close these windows up. Let's actually start working or focusing on electronic bank rec. Right, so I will go to, I'm going to show you electronic bank rec. So in the financial page, under the routine section, let's at least see how that module has been set up or how to set it up. This example, by the way, is set up using TD as the example. And TD actually happens to be a very good example. So under electronic bank rec, let's actually just go down the list. I'm going to start with configurator. And so regardless of which bank or which credit union or whatever you're using, they're all going to send you some sort of some sort of file. Now, my suggestion is that you actually ask your bank, what is that file going to look like? And in my experience, what they do is they give you some sort of little mini manual or a pamphlet or something like that that describes field by field what that file is going to look like. Now, I actually already have something in there. I have something that I've called the BAI format, right, which is the TD format that is being used. That's actually, it's also an international format. Not every bank is using it, but at least TD is. Right, so, but let me replicate this effort very easily. So TD Canada Trust, and I'll just put in TD over here. So I've been doing this particular type of implementation for quite a while, at least 10 years. Back in the day, every bank gave very unique requirements, and it was a bit of effort to actually go through it. Nowadays, at least TD is now using this international, what's the word? International format that everyone recognizes. I believe some other banks are also using that, right? But you really have to confirm with your particular bank on which one it is. Even if you're using TD, by the way, I would still suggest you actually ask them, just so we know, are you using the BAI format? Because even though it seems weird, I have had the experience where sometimes one branch says one thing, but another branch says the other. So we really have to be sure that we know what we're going to get. But you might have noticed that it was exceptionally easy this time around. Because they're using this international format that GP recognizes, all I did under file format was select BAI format, and everything got filled in for you, right? So I am literally already done at least 80% of the implementation over here. Okay, now admittedly, it could be a little bit different. So if the bank says, "Oh yeah, we do provide a file, and here's what it looks like, and it's completely unique. It's not a BAI format," then basically your goal is going to be you're going to have the header of the file. So in other words, the first row, and you're going to have some lines in the middle that show all the payments and all the other things that have to be reconciled, and then you also have the footer section, and you have to describe field by field what that file looks like. All right, so there's something called the record type and transaction code and transaction amount and a few other things. So hopefully whoever you're using does have BAI. In my experience, it takes maybe, let's say, a couple of hours to figure it all out to get this file set up if you do have to set up from scratch. And maybe another suggestion on my part is once you do have set up, even if it's TD, and and I say that because it's a format that's already recognized by GP, and GP already knows exactly what to do. Even if it's TD, and even if this was really easy, all you did was select BAI, I would still I would still make sure, I would do a test to make sure that what they provide you actually does reconcile. Because sometimes there's a little bit of a surprise. So don't wait until the last minute when you absolutely have to have this done within just a short amount of time. Try it out. Okay, now let me just go a little bit further into what this file actually looks like. So like I said, there's under each section, the header, the footer, and the details section, it's going to ask for specific types of information. They might be providing you a file that's formatted differently, like a comma delimited or tab delimited or something else. But either way, there's a lot of technicalities around it, and you just have to make sure that GP recognizes what you're looking at. And the other step is, or the other point to be aware of, is at the bottom right of this window, there's also something called the codes entry window. So within the file, long story short, each line is going to have a code to it, right? And that code tells the system what that type of transaction that is. So if I scroll down to the very bottom over here, then 475, if a line has 475, at least using this format, that means it's a check paid, right? So in other words, it's something that's ready to be cleared. And then if it's, for example, a deposit, then it could be one of a few different codes in there as well. And here's something that I find is kind of neat. If you go to another section called, for example, let's go to interest income, then there could be a few different codes in there as well, which is great. But the other part is that it's also asking for a GL account. So in other words, it will actually create the transaction for you, which will have a general ledger impact, right? So it's automating not just the reconciliation, the check marking, in other words, or the clearing, but also these extra little transactions that are like interest income or service charges or whatever have you. Okay. Now I'll admit the biggest value by far is getting 100 or 500 checks reconciled all at once, or maybe the deposits reconciled all at once. This is a nice little extra. Some people like to do this manually so they can actually think about it and focus. For example, they might say, "Why are we getting charged this service fee?" They want to make sure that that they cover that, not just in GP. Maybe what they actually want to do is call up the bank and say, "Hey, I shouldn't be charged that because of whatever situation." But anyway, this is what has to be done at this stage. Okay. If you have TD, it's 5 seconds. If you have a bank that does not use the BAI format, it might take you 2 or 3 hours to get this done. So after that, still going under electronic reconcile, there's also something called download maintenance. This is the second and the last window that's involved in actually setting this module up. So basically what you're doing here is you're calling up a code that will represent your import, right? So you're creating, I should say. So I called it a first bank because in my sample data, that's what my bank is actually called, right? And then I have the format that I set up in my prior step. And then I actually say, here's the bank that I'm working on. Here's the actual, and here's the checkbook. Here's the important part. Here's the checkbook that I'm using. Okay, so I actually had to click on the add button to add which checkbook I was going to be using. And maybe one thing that I sometimes forget to mention is that you can actually add more than one checkbook at a time. So depending on your bank, they might give you a file not just for your one bank account, but potentially for all bank accounts all at once. So for those of you who have a lot of them, this is hopefully going to be really exciting. If you have, let's say, I've seen 10 bank accounts or checkbooks, or even 20 or even more than that. So imagine reconciling 20 different checkbooks every single month or every single week. You can do a big import. You can import it once. Sorry, you can do a big download from the bank website. You can import into GP once, and it will reconcile all 20 of those bank accounts all at once. And that is a huge time saver. we're talking about, it could take a small team potentially, depending on the number of bank accounts you have, a small team of 2 or 3 people to reconcile all of that every single month. So this is a really huge time saver. Or if not, if you don't have a lot of bank accounts, we're just talking really about of reconciling a lot of transactions within your one bank account. So anyway, very little to do here. You created a download ID. You selected your bank format that you already set up. And the important part here is you selected which checkbook it is that you actually are going to be reconciling. Last step, by the way, is that that you're saying, here is where my bank file is. Okay, so I actually have it myself. I have it on my desktop. You will probably have it on some sort of network drive. Okay, now for those of you who really want to get into this like today after we hang up and want to make sure that you know all the steps, there's one last step. Under cards in the checkbook maintenance window, right? So cards, checkbook. Sometimes I say that a little too fast and just click on things, but right in here, you select your checkbook, and at the bottom left, there's also a field called bank account. So make sure that that is filled in and that it matches what your bank state or your bank file will have, okay? So make sure that this is not really some sort of ghost account. It doesn't actually match what your bank file has or whatever, but this is clearly what's in your bank file. If it doesn't match, then it won't reconcile anything. Okay, so there we go. Using the first 2 windows, we have done the we have set everything up, and that's obviously a one-time thing, so you will never have to do it again. It might be a little, it'll be like a new experience for some of you, but it is really something that shouldn't really take any more than 2 or 3 hours. And if it looks like it's going to be a headache for you, get someone else to do it. That's what I do. But anyway, so once you've done that, now we're going to go to the day-to-day or the month-to-month sort of process. Some people do it day-to-day. They want to be on top of things. But regardless of how often you do it, you go to the bottom window, transactions download. Okay. And then you select your download ID. I have elected to only have one bank download ID. So unless you have multiple banks, like TD and RBC and BMO, then I would suggest that you only have one download ID with potentially multiple bank accounts or checkbooks in there, right? So keep it as simple as humanly possible for you. And when you're in here, this is a very straightforward process to follow. You click on the first step after opening up the window, and remember, we went to transactions download. So the first step is to click on download. So let's do that. It's going to ask for confirmation, which is, I really just type in any number over here. This is more relevant to the US, so don't really focus too much on what this means. It doesn't really mean much of anything. Sometimes people put in the date, and that's perfectly okay too. Okay, so anyway, I will click on successful. And then you can see all the transactions that were in the file are now in here. So this is what the bank has provided us. Okay, to be very, let's say, clear about how GP is going to be reconciling, what it's looking to do, it's looking to match the check number, at least for checks. For deposits, that's something else. But for checks, it's looking to reconcile the check number, or rather match the check number and the dollar amount. And if those two match with what you've got in GP, that's cleared, okay, or reconciled if you want to say it that way. But that's really what GP is going to do automatically. Now, I know this is a very common question, so I'll go ahead and answer it. Almost always, people have in GP, they don't have check number 100. They actually have check number 000000100, and that's okay. It will still reconcile. The GP knows enough to strip away those initial zeros because the bank does not necessarily put that information in there. But anyway, there we go. I opened the window, I clicked on download, and now I'm going to click on reconcile, and my work should be done. At the very least, you'll see it in action. All right, so I'll click on reconcile, and keep in mind, maybe some of these will reconcile. Some of these may not if things have not actually been processed on our end, right, in GP. So they do have to match. But anyway, I will go in here, and I I clicked on the reconcile button, by the way, and that took me directly to my reconcile window, which I think every organization has been using already. I'll click on the transactions button, and you'll see a few things processing automatically when I get in there. Okay, are you sure? Yes. And you can, it actually even said electronic reconcile, or it's updating transactions and so on for the electronic reconcile module, right? So I won't bother printing this report right now. What I want to show you is the flashy part where we say, holy cow, we just finished clearing or reconciling or whatever, 100 checks. Oh my God, I usually spend 2 hours on that. I can't believe that was so fast. Well, there you go. It was only 6 this time, but that's really how fast it should be.
Holy
And
cow.
I'm glad you think so too, John.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that depending on the industry, you could have a ton of checks, you could have a ton of deposits, or you might have a ton of bank accounts, right? If you have a lot of different companies or whatever that you're amalgamating all the time. So this is really meant to be a fast, huge time saver, and not just a time saver, but it also reduces the number of errors that are involved on this. Okay, so you're not going to accidentally reconcile something that was not automatically reconciled.
Awesome.
I think what most people do at this end is, at the very end, is maybe just leave some things for themselves to reconcile. So like I said, the service charges, interest, bank interest, and things like that, that's what they like to type in themselves, but they really want GP to help them automatically reconcile the checks and then the actual deposits. So keep electronic reconcile in mind. It's rather straightforward to implement, and the even easier is to turn on the automatic bank deposit feature. Just keep in mind that that really depends a lot on how the batches are set up. So make sure that a batch, a cash receipt batch equals a deposit. And if it does, then you don't even have to worry about cash deposits ever again.
Awesome.
Great.
Does that mark the end of your what
It
you'd
is
like to
now,
show?
yeah. I could see
All
that
right.
1 minute ago you were thinking, oh, he's done, I can start talking. But yeah, now I'm done.
All right, cool. So we're just going to finish up here. Bear with me for one quick second. All right. Okay, so let's pause for about a minute to do a couple different things. First thing I'd like to do is I have a bit of a favor that I'd like to ask everyone, as well as I want to pause for some questions. So we have a survey that takes about a minute, and what it is going to allow us to do at GP365 is know which of the apps we're building that you care most about. So if you can, there's a link at the bottom you're going to see on the page. So tiny.cc/GP365. If you could go there, just take a minute, fill in the questions. We're going to do a draw on the next webinar, which is August 22nd, and announce the winner of a $200 Amazon gift card. So that will be announced. There's going to be one winner, and again, it takes less than a minute to complete the survey. And at the same time, for anyone who's already done that, if you could maybe enter a question, anything with GP that you'd like us to try and answer. If it's something very specific, as Carlos mentioned, we probably won't be able to answer it on the session. But any questions about electronic reconciliation, anything else, feel free to type that in, and we'll pause for about a minute, and then we'll finish off with wrapping up, as well as the giveaways for today. 15 seconds and we will move on. And if anyone's having issues filling out the survey or anything like that, let me know. Just shoot me a note. My email will be on the last slide, and I'll make sure that we get that figured out and get you entered into the draw. All right, just gonna scan quickly the questions here, see if there's anything for you, Carlos. I don't see anything, so I'll give everybody another few seconds. If nothing, we'll just move on.
While we're waiting, I thought I'd just mention that I showed that, by the way, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I mentioned this cool new feature called automatic bank deposits. I should have mentioned that it's available as of GP 2016. Okay, so anyone in GP, anything before that will be out of luck for now, but anyone at 2016 or 2018 will have that feature available.
Awesome. Good to know. All right, so let's keep rolling. Thank you to everybody who took the time to fill out that survey. And again, tune in on the 22nd of August. That webinar is scheduled payments, so we're going to announce the winner of the gift card there. Okay, so another couple quick things here is the new site is live. So I mentioned that we're launching officially on August 1st. That is awesome. As of right now, our new website and branding is online, so you can go check that out. For those of you that regularly join our webinars and events, I see quite a few familiar names here. Thank you. You're going to find those events under training. So if you look at the top right there and then click events, that's where all of our webinars will be posted. We just posted 2 new ones, one for August 22nd, which is on scheduled payments, and one September 19th, which is on multi-currency. I know that should be a really popular one, so feel free to go register for those before they fill up. Another item to mention is at the bottom of our footer, you can now register for our newsletter. So if you're receiving our invites now by email, you're on that email, so no need to sign up. But if not, you can go enter your email there, and it's very convenient. You'll be added automatically. We also have pricing updated on our pricing section, live screenshots of GP365, and of course you can register for a demo. Just click get started or any of the other contact us buttons, and one of us will reach out to you and make sure we get you set up. Okay, so again, next events, scheduled payments, multi-currency. Let's do giveaways. So I have 2 gift cards that I'm going to be giving away today. So depending on your preference, we'll reach out to you to confirm sort of which vendor you'd like us to go with. Starbucks, Tim Hortons, those are the common ones. So you'll hear from us. And just to note, if you do win today and you don't get the gift card within about a week, let us know, because we've had some issues with them not sending out. So we have to go back to Starbucks, go back to Tim Hortons to get them to resend it. So let us know if you don't get it. Okay, so the first one is Ruth. I'm just looking for a last name here, just in case there's 2. Ruth H and Sandra R. So those are the 2 names for today. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you guys in, I think, what's a month. Really appreciate all your help and support over the years, and look forward to talking to you soon. Carlos, thank you as always, and keep GPing. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. I'll talk to you next month.